Well, lovely to see everyone. Thank you for joining me both on Facebook and on Zoom. And I hope to have an evening bit of entertainment after a long day that's both amusing and a little bit enlightening. So I'll do it in my usual way. I've got a little bit of a PowerPoint shared with you that I hope will stimulate some debate. And then feel free to ask questions as we go in the chat box. And at the end, we'll take some live questions. So here we go. Yeah, so this is Public Health England's mnemonic or infographic rather about the obesity strategy. I think we all know this, that 63% of people are overweight. That was in 2015, and it's sure as hell not improving. And this is the Times headline on the day that this initiative was announced. Junk food deals will be banned by Johnson's assault on obesity. And I thought we should start with the word from our sponsor. And I don't know about you, but I'm a huge Spitting Image fan. I was absolutely delighted when I heard that Spitting Image is coming back. And this is Johnson's image. But literally, I do think we should give the great man the first few words.
Weight for ages and ages, and I think many people, I struggle with my weight, go up and down. But since I recovered from coronavirus, I've been steadily building up my fitness. I don't want to make any excessive claims because I've only really just started concentrating on. But I'm at least a stone down. I'm more than a stone down. But when I went into ICU, when I was really ill, I was way overweight. I'm only about 5'10", at the outside, and I was too fat. I start the day by going for a run with the dog, and quite a gentle run, but actually getting faster and faster now as I get fitter. And the great thing about going for a run at the beginning of the day is that nothing could be worse for the rest of the day. Once if you really go in hard, if you really take some exercise at the beginning, the rest of the day will be a breeze. So there are health reasons, but you feel much better, and that's the number one thing I would say. You actually feel more full of energy if you can get your weight down. And the other thing, obviously, is that if you can get your weight down a bit, and protect your health, you'll also be protecting the NHS. Gyms are great, but you don't need to have a gym. There are amazing things on your phone these days, amazing apps, fantastic trainers that you can watch on YouTube. What we're doing now with our better health strategies, just trying to help people a little bit to bring their weight down, not in an excessively bossy or nannying way, I hope. We want this one really to be sympathetic to people, to understand the difficulties that people face with their weight, the struggles that everybody faces, and many people face to lose weight, and just to be.
So with a few hesitations, that's our beloved leader, Boris at his best, or Boris at Boris, whichever way you look at it. So what is Boris's obesity strategy? Well, stores are to be banned from pushing the buy one, get one free promotions on unhealthy products. Can't argue with that. Promoting confectionery or high sugar foods at supermarket checkouts or store entrances is to be banned. Yep, applaud that. Supermarkets to be encouraged to offer more discounts on fruit and vegetables. Yep, no argument with that. And an end to junk food adverts on TV and online before the 9 p.m. watershed. All of which things are happening straight away. And then there's a series of government consultations which take things to another level altogether. So government will consult as to whether the planned advertising restrictions, both online and on TV, should be increased and more wide-reaching, including a total ban on advertising food that's high in fat, sugar, or salt. And this is where life gets a bit more complicated, isn't it? New legislation forcing restaurants and takeaways and a number of employees to add calories labels to their
Yes.
a consultation about adding similar calorie labeling to alcohol. NHS weight management service will be expanding with more smartphone apps to improve lifestyle and health. GPs will be encouraging people to get on their bikes. The NHS diabetes program will be improved, and GPs will be encouraged to prescribe exercise and other social activities to help keep people fit. And I've seen a tremendous amount of cynicism around all of this in the GP press. It'll be interesting to see what Karen has to say about that. And then there's going to be a consultation on the traffic light labelling system on food packets, how it's used by consumers and the industry while comparing it to other international examples. Amen to that, because I think that's a complete and utter disaster. So a very mixed bag. So what has actually happened in the interregnum? How has obesity changed over time in England? And you can see the increase in obese and morbidly obese from between 1993 and 2017. First thing, it looks quite encouraging because the number of overweight people is going down. But the problem is they're going down because they're becoming either obese or morbidly obese. So not a good thing. And here we see the percentage of people who are either obese or overweight year on year. And guess what? We're way over 60% now. So again, the trend is not good. And not only we're the fat man of Europe, we can proudly say that. I think the UK is the second highest consumer of ultra-processed foods outside the US, but we're still somewhat behind our American cousins in terms of the percentage of the population with obesity. All of that said, you know, we're on the same journey and we're going to be paying very much the same price. And I'm absolutely convinced that if you look at the correlation between obesity and poor COVID outcomes, the answers are obvious. Look how well Japan and Korea did in terms of COVID. Look how bad the US and we have done by comparison. Of course, it's not as simple as that, but it's certainly part and parcel. Okay, well, if it was just about obesity and looking a bit wobbly in our bikinis, it wouldn't be such a big deal, would it? But the trouble is, this whole thing of obesity, well, there are some, I'm just going to let some more people into the room. Thank you. Welcome, Sue. Good to see you. So if it was just about obesity, that wouldn't be such a problem, would it? But it's all the other associated diseases, high levels of obesity, related to sugar, carbs and processed food, which is my big theme, which lead to insulin resistance and raised insulin, which in turn drives heart disease, lipid problems, hypertension, type 2 diabetes, dementia, cancer, and even it can cause fertility problems in young women. So it's kind of buy one, get 8 free in a not very good way. But the good news is that if you resolve the one, you resolve the rest. So then it becomes buy one, get 8 free in a pretty good way. So, you know, it depends which way you look through the telescope, I guess. So Rishi Sunak wants us to eat out to help out. Great. And here is the readings from one of my staff, young, fit young lady, who had a McDonald's, and you can see she was nice and in the green zone. Everything was beautifully controlled until she had a McDonald's. And here's part of the problem. You've got these two strategies that are completely in opposition. One is to eat healthy foods, and the other one is eat out to help out. And guess what? We go and eat out really unhealthy foods, high in sugar, fats, and processed foods. And McDonald's have got an awful lot to answer for, in my view. So another part of Boris's strategy is to, and this is particularly a theme of Matt Hancock, as many people will know, is to use apps. Nothing wrong with apps. I'm a big fan of apps. We use apps ourselves. But if apps were the answer, well, what can I say? I think I'm right in saying that Fitbit in the last 10 years have delivered 100 million devices, during which period, you know, the industrialized world has become fatter and sicker. And even if you look at a really basic thing like a blood pressure monitor, you can buy a really effective accredited blood pressure monitor from your local pharmacy for 20 quid. But if blood pressure in the last 10 years has gone up and up and up, So, you know, if you were to look at the correlation, you'd say Fitbits and blood pressure monitors make you fat and unhealthy. Of course, that's not the case, but they're certainly not on their own doing the good that we might otherwise think. So aim to lose weight. Yeah, that's a good thing. 2 or more portions of vegetables, that's fine. But then it gets a bit more complicated. Choose lower fat, lower sugar options. Lower sugar options, absolutely agree. Lower fat, well, it's very hard to choose lower fat and lower sugar options. There are only the options of, if you look at the macros, it's protein, it's fat, it's carb. If you have lower fat, you're almost more inevitably going to have higher carb, and that's higher sugar. So they've got that wrong. And then even more fundamentally wrong, choose unsaturated oils such as rapeseed, sunflower and olive oil. Well, first of all, olive oil isn't really an unsaturated oil. It's basically saturated. And rapeseed and sunflower oil are metabolic poisons. And I did a Facebook Live recently on the evils and perils and lies we were all told about these seed oils. And if anyone wants to look back, they'll find quite a long diatribe from me on that subject. Drink 6 to 8 glasses of fluid a day. Completely agree with that. It's well known that the body can't distinguish between being thirsty and being hungry. So I'm fine with that. No matter how healthily you eat, you can still put on weight if you're eating too many calories. Oh dear, we're back at calories in, calories out, which is the same old failed strategy we've heard before. Everywhere we look, there are large, extra large portions of food and drinks, and there's a problem with portion size. I agree with that. But the honest truth is, if you eat healthy food, real food, you don't have to worry about portion size because your leptin, insulin and ghrelin modulate that for you. So this kind of obsession with calorie counting and portion size doesn't work. Okay. Weigh your food. Who's going to really do that? We're back at calorie counting. Using smaller plates. Well, you know what? I eat massive plates, but they're massive plates full of salad and healthy veg, unlimited quantities, full of macronutrients. And the whole point here is the Western diet is very high in calories, very low in micronutrients, and that's the exact reverse of where we want to be. So rather than using smaller plates, let's use absolutely bloody great huge ones and fill them with salads and above ground veg. 2 or more veg, yeah, no problem with that. While eating, yes, that's fine. I'm just going to let one more person into the room. It's certainly the case that a lot of us, you know, you sit in front of the television and you're eating, you're not even aware of it. So fair enough. Eat mindfully, and I'm terrible for stuffing my food. So Karen's actually been trained now to nag me when I eat too quickly, and I try and think about that. When I eat more slowly, my insulin, my leptin and my ghrelin do what they're supposed to do, and guess what? I eat much less. Keep an eye on your servings.
You'll need to unlock your device first.
Thank you, Siri. Right. Skipping breakfast can lead to unplanned and unhealthy mid-morning snacks. What absolute bunk, right? So they've still got it, some of it right. That's the trouble. It's not all wrong. It's half right and half wrong. And, you know, most people are going to be confused. This whole thing about being the most important meal of the day, absolutely true for Kellogg's cornflakes, but absolutely untrue for any other reason. Skipping meals is a really good thing. Just think about it. We were basically hunter-gatherers. We're somewhere between 1 million and 2 million years old. How much do you reckon the average hunter-gatherer would have had, you know, cornflakes for breakfast, Doritos for lunch and the rest of it? That have gone periods of eating and periods of starvation. Skipping meals, if you're not hungry, absolutely, it's something I do all the time, together with time-restricted feeding, and we've got a whole process around that. But it's not for everyone, and you don't start. So skipping meals, I completely disagree with them. So, okay, we all know that the simple sugars, you know, the tea, the sugar in your tea, the icing on the cake are a bad thing. Could give you a big and quick sugar spike. And we've all been taught, and it's in the food plate, to eat the complex carbs. Actually, they're both the same, and here's why. Your starches are basically glucose molecules stuck together with an oxygen. And when you metabolize them, guess what? They become glucose. So, you know, your nice healthy porridge for breakfast, your shredded wheat, your muesli, full of sugar. Don't go there. Now, they were talking in the strategy about alcohol, weren't they? Now, living in St Albans for many years, the campaign, the home of the campaign for real ale. I love a real ale. nearly 10 spoonfuls of sugar. So have I stopped drinking real ale? No, but I drink it rarely, and at least I know that it's, you know, nearly 10 spoonfuls of sugar. My point is, if you're one of these people that characteristically has 2 or 3 pints of an evening, you're starting the evening with 20 or 30 spoonfuls of sugar. And actually, I haven't given up the beer. I generally have lager, and if you're careful, you can find lagers that are low in sugar. Look at the wine. A small glass of sweet wine on the left has got 10 times more sugar than a large glass of red on the right. Right? Now, excuse me just one sec. Okay. But the point about the wine here is that the red wine, full of polyphenols, full of antioxidants, think about it as a health food, whereas the white wine's got no beneficial content in it. And the whole point about the pro-longevity program is to swap things that you like, but they're bad for you, for other things that you like, but they're healthy for you. So hit the Malbec. Okay, so what does the evidence show? Here's what the evidence shows. This is a summary of pretty much all the randomized controlled trials that compare weight loss results from low carb and low fat. And guess what? Surprise, surprise, low carb wins. And low carb, high fat is the way to go for most people. Quite where the balance of carbs, fats and proteins is very much an individual thing. And that's something we spend a lot of time talking to with our clients. But if you want really fantastic information, I really recommend the public health collaboration. I'm an ambassador for the PCH. There's all sorts of really helpful information on their website. I would encourage you to join, to support it, become an ambassador. And this year they had a fantastic online conference, all of it free online on YouTube. Every single presentation is compelling, and they're all evidence-based. You've got the experts there for free. Oh dear. So here's the so-called healthy plate or the Eat Well guide. Guess what? Written for the NHS by a bunch of experts on behalf of Public Health England. And guess what? All of them work for the processed food industry. They're all conflicted and none of this is declared. And here we are. We've got highly processed, highly sugary food disguised as healthy, and seed oils, you name it. And this is what the NHS and all health professionals are supposed to use to train people to eat with. It's the opposite of healthy. And this is my version of the Eat Well plate. As you can see, lots of colours, lots of above the ground veg. There are some carbs in it, but they're the low, slow carbs. And do not be frightened. Very noisy there. I'm just going to like that. Right, I think we're okay now. Do not be frightened of the nice, healthy omega-3 fats and natural food. So, you know, olive oil is good. Nothing wrong with chocolate, as long as it's not Cadbury's Dairy Milk with 79% sugar in it, and plenty of healthy colours and low, slow carbs. Oh dear, but here's the reality. This is the reality in the States, not in the UK, but we're not far behind. Almost 60% of calories coming from ultra-processed foods. Not a good look. And this is the truth of the matter. The food industry cons us and makes us sick, and the pharma industry makes us 10% better. And you know what? As a pharmacist, I spent most of my life practicing like this. I've spent years avoiding red meat. Everything was low fat, high sugar, eating seed oils, until I discovered the truth for myself. And it was a very painful thing to understand that for all the awards that I'd done and all the best that I'd done for my clients and my patients, perhaps I was doing as much harm as good. And it's completely changed the way I practice now. And now I'm busy getting people off the drugs instead of giving them more drugs. Absolutely missed and not discussed, and not something I've got time to talk for in detail today, sleep. But it is so important. It's important to your mental health. It's important to your physical health. It's important to your immunity, and particularly with COVID. Just to give you one example of how important sleep is, when you have a flu jab, if you've had a good night's sleep, as distinct from a bad night's sleep, it doubles or halves the efficacy of a flu jab. So really, really think about your sleep. And there's lots more about sleep on our website. And this is one of my themes, really. This is one of London's teaching hospitals. It's a cancer hospital. And side by side in cabinets was the unhealthy cabinet on the left and the healthy cabinet on the right. Do you spot anything? Because I did. The unhealthy one is full, and the unhealthy one, absolutely nothing in it, neglected and empty. So even if you wanted to have something healthy in a cancer hospital, you couldn't. And this is another favourite of mine. This just illustrates the amount of sugar in Heinz tomato ketchup, and I love Heinz tomato ketchup. And here's a typical British breakfast: some nice cornflakes, some apple juice, some toast, and that's how much sugar it represents. And you know, so many of my clients live on bananas, nice healthy bananas, and people who go for a run, they have a couple of bananas before the run, another banana afterwards. Small banana, 5 spoonfuls of sugar; large banana, 10 or 12 spoonfuls of sugar. Bananas ain't that healthy, I'm afraid. And this is my absolute pet hate: innocent smoothies. I'm at war with innocent smoothies. There is as much sugar in this particular innocent smoothies as 3.5 Krispy Kremed donuts, and yet they parade as healthy. And I've got so many clients, even health professional clients, who drink smoothies in large quantities thinking it's healthy. Trust me, there ain't nothing innocent or healthy about a smoothie. So leafing through the Times in the last few days, it was all looking good, cutting down on my risk. This is my new thing. Oh dear, Aldi price match. And there we are again, Cadbury's Dairy Milk, highly processed food, Diet Coke. And this is the problem. We're giving people one set of messages and simultaneously another set of messages. And until there's consistency about the messaging, there will always be confusion. And that is what the processed food, industry thrives on. And this is what most of us spend our lives doing. I'm just admitting a couple more people into the room. Most of us spend our lives in this kind of sugar roller coaster, with the sugar going up and down, the insulin following it. The insulin drags the sugar back down, and then you feel hungry and you feel strange and not very good. And I've quite a few of my clients have got this problem, and it keeps them awake at night. So they'll go to sleep when they're not eating. Just going to mute everyone. Sorry about that. And when they're awake at night, when they go to sleep, because they're not eating, and it destroys their sleep. And this is one of my favourite things from Robert Lustig. And if you don't know Robert Lustig, do have a look at his YouTube video. I think it's now been seen 3.5 million times. And he talks about the processing of processed foods and the hacking of the American mind, and the differences between all sugars, and a calorie isn't a calorie, and fructose, which seems innocent. Fruit sugar sounds innocent, but it's anything but. And fructose, high fructose corn syrup in the States, fructose in innocent smoothies. It completely bypasses your natural satiety mechanisms, and it goes straight to fat. So it's do not pass, do not collect 200 pounds, go to fatty liver. And as Rob points out, that we think that it's only, sorry, there's more people that want to join. As Robert points out, there are more people of normal weight with metabolic syndrome than obese people. And here's another example of the confusion that we get. This is Time magazine in 1984. Everything saturated fat was bad. And here we are in 2014, and it's reversed itself. And that is a part of the problem. Until we are absolutely consistent about our messaging, both health systems and health professionals. People will continue to get confused, and the processed food industry will continue to thrive on that. And here we are. These are other examples of people, whole populations here. There's no cardiovascular disease. They eat real food. They have very natural lives. And you simply do not see the Western diseases in these populations of pre-diabetes, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, cancer and dementia. These people live in perfect health, and guess what? They've got diets very high in saturated fat. They have very little or no processed food, and those are key. And here's the culprit. This is the food industry, and as you can see, I think it's 9 brands control the world's entire diet. And guess where they make their profit from? Yes, obvious, they get their profit from processed food. It's a multi-trillion-dollar industry, and the last thing they want you to do is eat real food, because it will affect their profits. And this is just to illustrate the kind of results that we get with ProLongevity. This is one of my clients, and you can see that he started obese, quite rapidly lost 10 kilos, his blood pressure normalized, his visceral fat normalized, all sorts of other inflammatory conditions disappeared, his tinnitus went, the hypos he was having at night and the poor sleep went, his memory improved, he stopped snoring, no longer constant hunger pangs, etc., etc. We didn't do anything that magic. We just supported him to eat real food and understand which was affecting him. So, in conclusion, Boris's strategy, I give it 1.5 cheers. I think it's quite bold and brave what he's done, particularly as he's naturally a libertarian. We have to fend off the vested interests of the sugar industry and seed oils and processed food. I've gone through the ongoing flawed advice from the Public Health England and the food plate. Much as I completely agree, everyone should exercise, but you can neither outrun nor outcycle a bad diet. It seems that we're still obsessed with calories and fat, the wrong fats. We play too little emphasis on sleep and stress, and the answer is quite fundamental: eat real food. So I will stop the share now. And hopefully I can take some questions. So if anyone wants to ask any questions, please indicate accordingly, and I'll unmute you and we'd be delighted to hear from you. I just had a comment from Raj on my Facebook. I agree with sleep. It's such an important element of keeping your health and well-being. We as healthcare professionals never talk about it. We need to have those to help people. We talk about exercise, but we really do not talk about sleep, and that really needs to happen. Trisha's asked advice for a vegetarian. Well, Trisha, simply this. So from evolutionary point of view, we are not designed to be vegans or vegetarians. That's simply evolutionary fact. Does that mean that you can't be a healthy vegetarian? No, of course it doesn't. What would I say about vegetarian? By not eating meat, you deprive yourself of some key proteins and related constituents. And maybe the most healthy food of all is offal, because that's what we were designed to eat. And offal is the most nutrient dense and food. I guess the next best alternative would be eggs. No calories in eggs, but they're very nutritionally complete. I've done a YouTube on veganism and vegetarianism. I've got lots of clients who are either vegan or vegetarian, either for moral reasons or for religious reasons. And of course, I completely respect that. So what's my point? Yes, you can be a really healthy vegetarian or vegan, but it does require a lot of work. You really need to understand nutrition, and it's likely that you're going to need some supplements. So very happy to talk to you offline in more detail about all of that. It is complicated, but but it's absolutely possible. So I hope that's helpful. I know that was a brief response. Thank you, Robert. 11 million times it's been watched now. Fantastic. Hats off to you. Marion says, do I have any contacts within Public Health England or NHS? I do. Without embarrassing anyone, I can tell you there are a lot of people in Public Health England and in the NHS who don't agree with the advice, don't practice it. And it's quite interesting that Matt Hancock, the health secretary, himself is low carb, but doesn't really dare talk about it. I believe that we have to create a social movement for change. And it's completely out of the same playbook as the tobacco industry. And, you know, you can go to YouTube. There's a YouTube video from 1994. And in 1994, the chief executives of the 5 largest tobacco industry suppliers, companies, all appeared in front of the Senate, all 5 of them. And they swore in front of the Senate that in their best understanding of the science, there's no link between smoking and lung cancer. This wasn't 1934, not 1954, 1994. You can still find it on YouTube. And I can tell you that the sugar industry and the processed food industry, if you just scratched out the word, I can see Karen nodding at me. If you just scratched out the word tobacco and replaced it with processed food, you end up in exactly the same place. And as you probably know, I do a lot of, I'm a national spokesman for my profession. And a couple of years ago, I went with the National Pharmacy Association to the Tory party. Well, we went to all 3 party conferences. At the Tory party conferences, there were 2 biggest stands, Tate and Lyle Sugar on that side, Philip Morris Tobacco on the other. I wonder why that might be. So, okay, I'll get off my hobby horse now. What carb was on your health plate, Graham? Well, if you go back to the health plate, and it's all on my website. So it does depend. It is individual. It depends how tolerant you are of carbs. I'm certainly not primarily keto. Some of my clients, we do go keto, but by far the minority. The healthy carbs are, you know, the whole carbs, whole grains, very hard to get hold of because a lot of them parade as being healthy whole grains when they're not. That's a very individual discussion. So I do not want to do what we tend to do, which is demonize one food group, then demonize another, and then another. I don't demonize the carbs. I tell you what I do demonize, though, the processed carbs. A lot of carbs are highly processed, and that's where the problem lies. For example, your bread in your local supermarket is full of sugar. Why is it full of sugar? Not to give it taste, but because it's a humectant. What does that mean? It keeps the bread moist, and that's why the bread will last for a longer time on the shelf, as distinct from the stuff in the bread shop. Right, Karen, I can see you've got your hand up. Please.
Yeah, hi, I'm on my phone and to type questions. It's just, hi, nice to meet you, albeit virtually, and thank you for this.
Absolutely, lovely to meet you.
And so I'm sort of 3.5 years into a low carb keto-ish journey. And what I'm starting to realise is I'm going to have to change things up now because time of life, hormone stuff starting to happen.
Yep.
What would you, and this carbs thing, I think I've got a bit, I think potentially orthorexic in some ways around, I'm not touching carbs, I'm not
yeah.
I've kind of gone that way,
yeah.
apart from a teaspoon of honey every day. But
yeah.
Would it be literally a case of introducing one, see how I react, and because I'm starting to hear about carb cycling, and perhaps because I'm entering perimenopause, that I need to lower the fats and all that sort of thing. But I just really struggle with what I feel like is crashing on too much protein.
Right. Okay.
I'm like, so, but if I add more carbs into the mix as well, I'm just going to crash all over the place.
Yeah. So I think all of this is because the food industry wants you to be confused because they can sell you anything, right? And the next point is this, and this is I haven't really talked about today is the microbiome. If you feed 100 people an identical meal, by and large, you might anticipate that all 100 people will react in the same way in terms of the glycemic response, how much it affects their sugar. There's some fascinating Israeli research which shows what they did is they got a load of people and they followed them. They gave them a continual blood glucose monitor and they analysed their microbiome. And they were able to show that it was the microbiome, not their own genes, that determined their sugar response. So it's very individual. And one of the things that I think is so useful with the continual blood glucose monitors that we supply all our clients is that ability to look inside you and see how you are reacting to individual foods. And that may well be the answer for you, Karen, which is we can provide that to you if that's something you want to have a go with. And it may well enable you to see how you're reacting to foods. The other point is this: nobody eats a piece of bread on its own, right? I've got clients who say, I can give up the fat, I can give up the flour, sorry, I can give up the rice, I can give up the potato, I can give up the pasta, I can't give up the bread. And I love bread, right? We try 10 different breads with 20 different fillings. And in the end, we find 1 or 2 breads with 3 or 4 different fillings that don't cause a spike. So there are always around this. And the whole point about the Pro Longevity service is the personalization. So I hope that's helpful. And please, if I can help you in more detail, which I haven't got time to do now.
No, of course. But yeah,
do please contact me offline and I'm happy to chat in greater detail.
Yeah, let's talk about monitoring, definitely, I think. Thank you.
All right. Thanks a lot for the question. And in fact, one of the things I recommend to a lot of people is something called fiber flour. So this is a tip. A couple of things, actually. If you get your potato or your bread or your rice and you freeze it or stick it in the fridge and then reheat it, it restructures the starch and it becomes insoluble, right? And that on its own can halve the glycemic index. So that's something quite nice to know. And I get a lot of my clients doing that. But one of my pet recommendations is longevity flour, LONJEVITY. The guy who runs it, Jerry, he's a medical doctor, I think originally an anaesthetist, but I might be wrong about that. Absolutely passionate about healthy, about fiber, about the microbiome and all of this stuff. Longevity flour, have a look at their website. We bake we've got a bread maker and we occasionally make bread with them. No sugar spikes, really filling, really enjoyable. And if you email Jerry and say that Graham sent you, they'll give you a bit of a deal as well. Fiona.
Hey, hello. Can you hear me?
I can, Fiona. Welcome.
Great. Hi. I didn't switch the camera on though because I'm doing stuff, so I was like, oh, that's not suitable right now.
No problem. Thank you for joining us.
Hi. Yeah, it's great. I'm well aware of a public health collaboration that Sam set up. So yeah, you guys are doing really great work. But because of what Karen, I think? A lady called Karen. What Karen was just saying about her personal experience with low carb.
Yeah.
The thing is, okay, low carb will not be the same thing for one person and another person. Like, so as you know, as helping people with this, there's so many different, versions of low carb, and really, like, I think Karen would probably benefit from getting a hormonal panel done, because if you have thyroid problems or you're leptin resistant, you can actually, high fat can actually be difficult to turn into energy, I found. So, and it's not even about raising carbs, it's sometimes about the amount of fat versus the amount of proteins and the type of proteins you're eating, the types of fatty acid chains that are in those proteins. So you might be better with fish protein rather than beef protein, or stuff like that. That's what I've just noticed, and from my personal body as well. Getting the hormone panel done tells you a lot. So of how you metabolize certain types of fats and types of proteins. So I mean, and the whole rumor about people with, say, hypothyroid should not do low carb, that's not necessarily true either, because I know many people who are hypothyroid and have benefited from doing their own version of low carb. So, yeah, as I said, they just adjusted the fat. Like, they don't just gorge on fat. People say, oh, fat bums, let's eat fat bums for snacks. You know, let's scoop down the coconut oil like it's a tub of ice cream.
Yeah, that doesn't sound like nutrition to me.
Exactly. Yeah. So sometimes low carb, high fat.
I think I think that's a fair comment, Jane. And the other point for me is everyone obsesses about the macros, the proteins, the fats, and the carbs. Actually, nourishment doesn't reside there. Nourishment resides in the micronutrients.
Exactly. Yeah. Because a carb is not a carb, and a fat is not a fat. It's so many different types. Yeah. And
I think your big point, Fiona, if I've understood correctly, is that it's very individual, and that's why we try and tailor what we do, because there's always an answer. And sometimes it's obvious, but for many of my clients, it's far from obvious. They're confused. They get all these mixed messages, which I illustrated earlier on.
Yeah.
And one of the things I have to do is keep correcting the messages, because as soon as they come away from the discussion we've had, they're bombarded by all this advertising that pretends to be healthy when it's not. One of the things I always say, folks, is ignore the front of the pack. Always look at the back.
Yes,
the front advertising bullshit, and the back is the truth.
Yeah, and you get like, even I noticed the other day the slogan "No added sugar." That if you slap that slogan on the front of a packet, it makes people think, oh, it's low sugar or sugar free, or but it's fruit rolls or dried fruit rolls aimed at kids. Or, one of these like horrendous so-called diabetic packets of biscuits that you're probably familiar with. And it's horrendous stuff. But, just because it says it's diabetic biscuits, it's still full of refined wheat that'll spike blood glucose anyway, maltitol, stuff that will give you terrible gas. And it's just
one of the things that annoys me most is unhealthy food masquerading as healthy food. You see it in the gyms all the time, usually oils and unprocessed crap and etc. Where are you, Fiona? It's obviously not a UK accent.
Oh, my family, like Irish American and that. So, but I have family in the UK. So I spend time in the UK, Ireland, or San Francisco, California.
And where are you now?
Right now, I'm in the English countryside.
Wonderful. Well, lovely to speak to you. Thank you very much for joining us.
Yeah, thank you. Keep up the good luck with the Tories trying to give up their love of food corporations.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you can hear me, Robert. We have a superstar with us, Robert Lustig. Are you there, Robert?
I'm here. How are you?
I am absolutely delighted to have you with us, and incredibly honoured. Do you want to say anything? Because
not a thing. This is your webinar.
Well, do feel free to join in, and thank you so much indeed for joining us. I'm deeply
honoured. As long as you unmuted me for your audience. In the spring, I will have published a book in the UK. It will be called Metabolical: The Lure and the Lies of Processed Food, Nutrition, and Modern Medicine. And it will answer a lot of these questions as well. Graham, as far as I can tell, everything that you've said, I agree with. So thank you so much for being on the right side of this problem.
Well, for those who don't know him, Robert is one of the leaders and an absolute pioneer in this field. Yeah, we are not worthy, Robert. Everyone is like this. I'm over the moon for you to have joined us. And if I can support you in any way, please just shout. And thank you so much for joining us. Okay. Do I have any? I'm going to lower your hand, Fiona, because we've spoken. Joyce, would you like to unmute?
Hi.
Hi, Joyce. Good to see you.
I wonder if you could talk a little bit about ladies of a certain age, that's me, and dairy, and why that can be an issue, and how do you know if it's an issue? And just one additional question also about this, is it reset weight, that your body has a natural weight that it wants?
Set point.
Yes, yes.
Okay. So give me a bit more detail on the question.
Well, for myself, I'm low carb. I've been fasting about 6 years, I think 5 or 6 years, and then went low carb about 2 years ago. And I'm just getting to the point now. I'm going to get terrible hay fever, and also I would say I could still do with losing some weight. It's not that I can't lose weight, but I find I've been a size small where I seem to naturally be able to be more comfortable at this weight, and I don't know whether it's the dairy and also the hay fever thing. So I'm thinking about whether I should be giving up dairy as well, really, because I'm active, I'm out running and all sorts. So, and I've just a slight addition actually for Karen. I got rid of all my I had terrible menopause problems to the point I was on antidepressants by the doctor, and I've got rid of all my menopause problems. I'm no longer on medication with no problem. So it has worked from that point of view.
One of the things we tend to do is we eat, because we think this is causing us a problem and that's causing us a problem, we start here and we're eating less and less and less and less and less. And as we're doing that, we're narrowing and narrowing and narrowing our microbiome because they eat what we eat. We're narrowing and narrowing our enjoyment and our food palette. And so many of my clients have ended up, they're frightened to eat anything. And in the end, they're eating calories, which are just about keeping them with energy, but they're getting no nutrient content. And so I'm not keen to tell people to give up complete food groups. Does that mean that there are no people for whom exclusion diets are helpful as a starting point? Well, of course, there are people who do benefit. Eggs have been, demonized, and then butter's been demonized. And this is the stuff from an evolutionary biological point of view, that's what we've been designed to eat. So I can't give you an absolute answer on that, Joyce, but what we'd really, I guess, want to do is look in real detail at your lipids, your liver function tests, how you respond to the food, and all those kind of things. And maybe for you, microbiome analysis might be useful. I do that for about 10% of clients, where we're really struggling to understand what's going on and what have you had HSCRP. So we look at high sensitive measures of inflammation and so on. So it might be an answer, but I wouldn't jump to that conclusion. So I think I've answered the first part of your question. And do you have a second part?
Just about the reset. Sorry, what did you call it?
Set point.
Set point. Yeah.
Set point. Yeah. So there used to be this theory, and it's still debated, that the body has a natural set point, and which I'm sure is fair. So that the body neither wants to lose weight nor gain weight. And I tell you who to read on. If you follow Jason Fung, he writes extremely clearly on the set point theory. So I'm sure there's truth in that, because you've got this principle of homeostasis, which is the very tight control of the organism. And even primitive single cell organisms very tightly control their internal environment. And we're complex organisms, so we have complex controls. If you think about the hunter-gatherer tribes, or you think about animals in the wild, they're not fat, because they eat when they're hungry. They don't eat when they're not hungry. Their energy balance is right. I don't want to get into calories in, calories out, because I don't really believe in it. But there is clearly an energy balance. If you're eating real food, then I think your body will naturally be at a natural healthy set point. But if over many years you've disrupted the balance between all your hormones, insulin, leptin, and that's only a selection, there are many others. Just going to mute that. Then your set point could be in the wrong place. I mean, I remember as a kid, I was a fat kid, right? I was a fat kid when most of the kids are slim. Now all the kids are fat. And the fatter I was, the hungrier I got, and the hungrier I got, the fatter I got. And it wasn't until I realized that all my balance of my hormones was out of whack. And now, I tell you what, I call it the tyranny of food. I'm just not hungry anymore. So most weekdays I probably have one meal. Weekends I usually have two. I'm just not hungry. So all of that problem's gone away. And with it, you know, my weight has naturally come down. So when you get the balance right, the body does what it's designed to do. So, you know, very happy to talk in more detail offline. And I hope that was to say it's at a high level, but I hope it was helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Nobody else waving at me. I'm just going to have a look at, Tricia said, I think nutrition should be on the curriculum. Do you agree? That was on Facebook. I could not agree more, Tricia. And this is one of my big themes. All medical professions, pharmacists, doctors, nurses, dentists, optometrists. We have no training on sleep, no training on exercise, and almost no training on nutrition, even recently qualified ones, right? What are we trained in? We're trained in the identification of symptoms and the treatment of the symptoms with drugs. And that's why I became the pharmacist that gave up drugs, precisely for that reason. And I realized that I was, you know, and if you ask most GPs, and I'm not knocking GPs, they do a fantastic job, as many people know, my partner's a GP, but most GPs just don't have the knowledge. So when you ask them the question, they're pretty reluctant to say, I've not got a clue, I've got no training. Most of them will say, eat a balanced diet, or they'll give some kind of conventional wisdom, hand it over to a dietitian. And the trouble is, it's the processed food industry's trains the dietitians, the pharma industry trains the health professionals. None of us are evil. We all set out to do our absolute best. And it's really hard to acknowledge after 30 years you've been doing it wrong. So I could not agree more. And I'm actually going to start campaigning for nutrition, exercise and sleep to be an integral part of the pharmacy professional training, where I do have some influence, but to spread that to other professionals. So Tricia, 100% agree with you there. Just going to read a couple more questions. Thank you, Karen. You obviously, I've got some agreements there. I'm just going to have a look. Yeah, we've discussed that. We've covered that. The confusion within the low carb, high fat and keto world. Yes, I agree with that, Karen, too. It's become a religion, hasn't it? You've got to be in my religion. These things almost become a religion, and I avoid that, right? I'm not in any religion. The religion I'm in is helping my clients get the best for them. That's about personalization. It's about goal setting for them and being with them on a journey. And yes, keto is very good for some people. There are obvious benefits for some people, but most people find it hard to stick to. If you're type 1 diabetic, then keto, absolutely. If you're really struggling type 2, but for most people, they don't need to be keto, but they certainly need to be low-ish carb, and whatever they do, avoid seed oils. So completely agree about that. Robert says, I'm hoping this new book will answer the issue of medical ancillary education. We wait with bated breath, Robert, so I'm sure that you'll be doing some more YouTubes, and please do alert us to that. I can't tell you that original 1.5 hours that you did on fructose, how many times I watched it, and every single time I watch it, something new. And I know there's a new one that you did more recently on the metabolic. I'm halfway through the second one at the moment. I stumbled across that last night. Okay, so I've answered, I think, all the questions in the chat. Robert says it's yellow kite and he doesn't have a launch date next, but I'm sure you'll let us know. How do you go about, Sue wants to know how you go about finding someone or somewhere to do a health assessment. Drop me an email. I'm quite happy to give some basic advice, and we can go from there. So I'm very happy to deal with that privately. Anybody else? We said that we do 45 minutes. We're now pretty much up to an hour. Is anyone waving furiously at me? Okay. So it's always best, they say, to leave the audience wanting more. We'll be doing more in a couple more weeks. What is really helpful is if you let me know subjects you're really keen for me to cover, I'll try and cover those as well. Thank you all very much. And thank you particularly to our special mystery guest, Robert Lustig, and a wonderful evening, everyone. Bye now.